Well, ladies and gentlemen, the first half of our Grand Finals roster has been set, and now it is time to fill out the second half. Welcome to day number 5, and here is the first group for today. The Mercedes-AMG, the Ferrari Modena, the Aston Martin, and the 05 Viper. Hopefully I pronounced all of those correctly. I feel bad when I mispronounce something because I want to do each racer justice while possible. As we get into this first race though, it is the Viper currently out in front, followed closely by the Ferrari and the Aston Martin, who are actually slowly starting to fall behind. The Viper did go diagonal against the wall, but quickly corrects themselves. They gotta stay straight, otherwise they might lose a lot of speed, or worse, as they approach this last hill. They do go a tad bit airborne, but they stay relatively straight, and then they spin sideways, and they have enough speed to finish in first. The Ferrari finishes in second, the Aston Martin finishes in third, and the Mercedes currently nowhere to be seen, and they now approach and they are going to finish in fourth. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this particular obstacle right here has been a massive game changer so far. Some racers could start out doing relatively well up until this hill, and then everything goes haywire for them. We've seen people spin around, we've seen people flip over, we've even seen some of them fly off the track completely. Long story short, that hill can be very dangerous, and it is likely because of that hill that as of now, we still have not seen an undefeated racer go into the Grand Finals. Usually by now in these tournaments, we have at least 1 or 2, possibly even 3. But as of now, we are halfway through the main part of the tournament before the Grand Finals, and no one has been undefeated. And right now, if anyone's going to break that streak, it's going to be the Viper. So as we get into heat number 2, the Viper, I believe, yes, they are starting way in the back, but look at this, out of nowhere. The Viper and the Ferrari take off like a rocket, leaving the other two in the dust. I am not entirely sure what happened there, but this is going to be good news for them. Right now the Ferrari is trying to do everything they can to stop the Viper from finishing in first again. Because if he doesn't get to be undefeated, he doesn't want anyone else to be. And so far they are staying in first. They approach that hill. They both go airborne. They both spin sideways. And the Viper manages to find a way around the Ferrari and finish in first yet again, despite the Ferrari's best efforts. And there's the Aston Martin finishing in third. The Viper did finish with a slightly faster time, but even then, there are racers who are in the Grand Finals right now who have finished with even faster times, almost by a full second or two. And just as a reminder, currently the fastest time is held by the Batmobile, who managed to break the 16-second mark and finish with a 15.6692. He appeared in day number 3, and we will be seeing him again in the Grand Finals. For now, let's take a look at where this last vehicle is. Somehow they're able to get around that last turn. I'm not sure what causes them to slow down so much. It almost looked like they actually got stuck on that last turn. And I'm sure that if it weren't for that dip right at the end of that turn, they would not be able to get over that hill because they almost didn't even there. Look at this, these two were almost synchronized for a little bit, but the Viper managed to control himself just enough to the point where he was able to pass the Ferrari and keep his hope of being the first undefeated racer in this tournament alive. And so far, this last vehicle about to show up, it's not looking good for them, shall we say. But here we go. Right now, the Viper does already have 2 wins. They just need 1 more to automatically progress. And they are starting behind the Ferrari again, this time in the other lane. And they are pulling ahead of the other 2 again, but this time the gap is much, much smaller. And the Ferrari currently has a bigger lead this time, and any lead you have is definitely advantageous for you. But like we've seen already many, many times, that hill at the very end could switch things up. And look at this, the Viper suddenly pulls away. They go around that last turn. They're trying to stay undefeated. They stay on the hill, and then they fly off the track. And the Ferrari takes advantage of that and finishes in first. Yet another example of the hill taking another victim. It looked like the Viper had it in the bag. But they went from hopefully being undefeated, relying on their backs on the outside of the track. Look at this, the way they went over that hill, they were actually going to the side, and they had enough speed and momentum that they bounced off the railing and just went clean over. This is definitely good for the other racers, but the Viper is still in a good position to move on despite what just happened. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin almost didn't even get over that hill at all. We got the tail end of that. Hopefully, they're not dead or something worse. What could be worse than that, I don't know, but that was horrifying to watch. That being said, the Ferrari does take advantage. The Viper's undefeated streak is cut short already, and that puts him in a much better position to move on alongside the Viper. In fact, I think because of that finish, the Ferrari is actually in the lead in points now by 1 over the Viper. It's looking pretty good for those two. The other two, not so much. And once again, the Viper and the Ferrari are way out in front, but this time they have swapped positions, and now it is the Viper trying to stop the Ferrari from passing him. So far, they're both staying relatively straight, but as I say that, the Ferrari spins around and loses speed as a result. The Viper pulls away, going around that turn, approaching the hill, and they do stay airborne. In fact, that may have been one of the cleanest jumps we've seen so far. They went way into the air, but they didn't bounce all that much, all things considered. You're gonna finish in style, I suppose. And now it is the Aston Martin finishing in 4th, actually. Yet take a look at this jump again. Went clear into the air. Did very little bouncing afterwards, and managed to quickly fix themselves so they stayed on their feet and didn't spin around too much. That is probably one of the better jumps we've seen, even if it's not the absolute smoothest. Because if you can launch yourself pretty far like that, and then quickly get back on your wheels and keep going, you're definitely putting yourself in a much better position. They did almost spin around, but they managed to stop themselves from doing it. The Ferrari wasn't so lucky, but they didn't lose that much speed in the process either. But now all 4 races have been ran, and it is the Viper and the Ferrari moving on. Who will join them in the second group? Let's find out. We have the Low C GT, the Rocket Bikester, the Lancer Evolution, and the Beetle. I'm definitely loving the designs on some of these, even if they're not custom made. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, our next custom mail-in tournament is coming up soon. If you want to participate, go to the Races and Fun Facebook page to learn more. In the first race of this group, the Lancer Evolution is out in front. And so far, no one is that close to them, which normally is a good thing. In fact, it still is. However, that hill can switch things up quite a bit, as we've seen multiple times already. But look at this, the Lancer Evolution actually went sideways for so long that they lost a lot of speed, and now the Beetle is out in front and they take first place. The Lancer still finished in second, which is still good. However, if they can't stay straight, they will be in trouble later. And the Low C gets stuck on the last turn, so we have a non-finisher already. And look at that, they just went so slow around that turn because of the straightaway beforehand. And the Beetle saw an open window and took it, and they actually stayed low to the ground, which is another good strategy. You'll either want to stay low to the ground to keep that speed going, or if you are going to go into the air, launch yourself far, and then don't do much bouncing once you land. But now the Beetle is the one who could be undefeated. If he loses here, then we will go 5 videos without an undefeated racer. Right now, the Lancer Evolution is out in front. They did start out in front, so that definitely helps them, but that doesn't always mean they'll stay that way. And now, because of the Losi GT kind of blocking the other two, the Lancer Evolution has a much bigger lead now. In fact, I didn't even see the Losi GT for a second there. The Lancer Evolution is trying to be a little bit more careful this time. So far successful. Bouncing off the walls just slightly, but not too much. They go into the air and then they start spinning sideways, goes backwards. But thankfully they had enough of a lead to the point where they finished in first this time. So the Beetle will not stay undefeated, and we will go 5 straight videos without an undefeated racer. And yep, the Losi GT still doesn't finish, and this time they got stuck much farther up the track. Up until they landed on top of the hill, that Lancer's jump was very nice. In fact, that one was as well, although they did bounce around and spin a little bit after landing. Sometimes the jump isn't all that bad, but how you land can really mess you up as much as the jump itself can possibly do so. These racers are fighting it out, and so far no undefeated racers, but we have 3 of these 4 who are relatively close in points. The Losi GT, with 2 non-finishes already, is already out at this point because they cannot catch up to the Beetle or the Lancer Evolution. At best, they can finish in 3rd. Actually, no, I do take it back, ladies and gentlemen. I did a slight error in my calculation. The Losi GT could still technically move on, but in order for that to happen, they would need to finish in first twice, while the Beetle and the Lancer Evolution do not finish at all. In this particular race, though, the Rocket actually finishes in first. So who's going to finish in second this time is the question. This could make all the difference. Are we going to have anyone else finish? I don't think in the time I've been here we've had any particular race where all 4 racers didn't finish. We usually have at least 1. It looks like we did have at least 2 finishers that time. And the Losi GT somehow got stuck there of all places, while the Beetle got stuck where the Losi got stuck before. Yeah, that was definitely a nice jump. A little rough on the landing, but the jump itself was beautiful. And that did give him, or rather help him, get the first place finish. And they finished way before anyone else. There's usually not this much of a delay, but look at that, the Lancer, just like one of the racers in the first group, almost got stuck on that turn, but they had just enough momentum going forward to the point where they were at least able to finish at all, which is a much bigger step up than not finishing. Definitely greatly increases their odds to move on, especially with 2 other racers who did not finish. You can see him in the back just coming up now. Makes you wonder what time they would have finished with. So now we are 3 races in. The Rocket and the Lancer are in the best position to move on right now. The Beetles does have 7 points, so he's not too far behind. He could definitely catch up at least to the Rocket Bikester, depending on how they finish. But that'll all depend. Right now the Lancer is out in front, and the Beetle is in second. He definitely needs to step up. He needs to finish really well, while the Rocket does not finish really well. The Lancer currently staying straight, handling those straightaways really well, going around that last turn, going up the hill, slightly airborne, but a very clean landing, and they finish in first, so they will move on. Oh my goodness, I was about to say the Beetle. Are they going to finish in second? No! They don't even finish at all. The Beetle actually gets stuck. We're going to have to see what caused them to end on their back. It's likely this jump here. But the Lancer was very smart in how they landed. They started by clipping the edge of the downward part of that hill, and they landed very smoothly, not much bouncing whatsoever. The Beetle, however, was not so lucky. And this is a shame because it looked like we would have had all 4 racers finish if the Beetle stayed on his feet. But that didn't exactly happen. He ended up on their back going down the hill, and the Rocket managed to take second. The Viper not the Viper, it was the same color, but not quite. The Low C did finish in third, but obviously not enough. The Lancer and the Rocket will be moving on to the finals, and they will be joining the Ferrari and the Viper. You see what I mean? A very similar color. Here we go into the first race of the finals. The Viper and the Ferrari start out in the front row, and so far they're staying relatively neck and neck. As we get around that turn, it is the Viper who takes the lead, and the gap is staying relatively small. But the other racers are trying to catch him. The Viper is pulling away. He is fishtailing a little bit, bouncing off the walls, trying to maintain his speed, which could be good or bad depending on how he approaches this hill. He does land relatively shaky, but he quickly fixes that and stays straight to finishing first. And we have 2 upside-down finishers, ladies and gentlemen. The Viper, and I think that was the Ferrari, finished, but the other 2, they both landed on their backs. Let's take a look at each of these jumps. Here comes the Viper. Goes into the air briefly, and I think they might have clipped the railing just slightly with one of their wheels, but they got back on the track and kept going. That one was relatively clean. They did go diagonal for a little bit, and these 2, almost at the same time, went up the hill, went sideways while airborne, and that caused them to tumble as they approached the finish line, and they got stuck before they could finish. The Rocket and the Lancer both don't finish at all, which is giving the Viper and the Ferrari a much better chance to move on to the grand finals. Here we go into the second race. It is the Lancer and the Ferrari out in front this time. But the Viper is actually pushing the Lancer forward right now, and the Lancer is grateful, takes full advantage, and now they have a decent-sized lead from the other 3. But is that gap going to close or widen? So far they are staying out in front. The other 3 are staying barely off camera, but here comes the Rocket out of nowhere, looking to pass. The Lancer almost did, but they couldn't stay straight enough to do it. Now the Lancer goes up the hill, followed closely by the Rocket, who now does take advantage of what happened to the Lancer, who stopped in almost the exact same spot as they did in the first race. And now the Ferrari and the Rocket are the 2 finishers. And where is the Viper? They somehow ended up going sideways and stopped before they even got to the hill. The Lancer is just not that lucky with this hill. They just end up on their backs, even if the initial landing looked clean initially. Oh, the Viper actually did get to the hill, but he didn't have enough speed to get up and over because he was going sideways. This is not good for the Viper. He at least did finish in the first race, so that's going to help him, but this certainly will not. We now have 2 racers tied with 5, one with 6 and the other with 0. Into race number 3. At this point, it's basically anybody's game still, even the Lancer, if he can stay straight and on their wheels. They are in the lead right now, but will they be able to hold on to it? They're trying to get as much of a lead as they can. And one thing they can do, if they're smart about it and careful for sure, is even if they land on their backs, they can try to position themselves in a spot where other racers will push them forward and stopping them in the process. But no, the Lancer Evolution not only was not able to stay on his feet, but he went off the track. And now the Viper crawls to the finish line, barely getting across. and they manage to take first place. And the Rocket pushes the Ferrari ahead of him so that the Ferrari finishes in second. Every time so far, the Lancer is struggling to get over that hill and stay on the track or on his wheels. The direction he was heading going up that hill caused him to fly clean over. He might have clipped it on his way down. But the fact is, he still didn't finish, making it 3 in a row, and he is out at this point. Because the other 3 racers at least managed to finish. The Viper was going sideways for a little bit, but he straightened himself out just in time to have the speed he needed to finish in first yet again, making up at least a little bit for the non-finish in race number 2. The times aren't that great, but you just need to move on right now. So it's really just a fight for the 2 spots, as it always is. But one racer is basically out at this point, so the other 3 have a bit of breathing room. Right now the Viper has 10 despite not finishing before, so they will have the lead, but the Ferrari is right behind him with 9, and the Rocket has 7. So the Rocket needs to pull something out here. Right now he is in front of the Lancer, so he might finish in second if things stay the way they are. The Viper currently has the lead going into that last turn, and they go up the hill, and they land on their nose for a second, but they get back into a better position, and they finish in first, so it is the Viper moving on. And I didn't quite say, I think the Ferrari finishing in last, I don't think they'll move on as a result. The Rocket, I believe, managed to finish in second that time. At least our friend who's been not finishing at all, he's able to at least do so this time around. So they can say they at least finished once. But the Viper will be moving on. It's just a matter of who is going to join him. I believe it will be the Rocket, but we'll see for sure in just a moment. Oh no, I stand corrected. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tiebreaker. The 2 red vehicles, the Rocket and the Ferrari, will have a face-off now, and I believe it'll be who has the fastest time after 2 races. So if your faster time in the first race is faster than the other racer, if they finish in first in the second race, you will still move on because you have the overall fastest time in the tiebreaker. Right now, the Ferrari is in front, but the Rocket is fighting with him around that turn. And now the Rocket is out in front, but he spins sideways as he goes up the hill. But because the Ferrari did the same thing afterwards, the Rocket managed to stay in first and now has the upper hand, finishing with a 17.73. If the times get really close, we will go into further decimals. But right now, the important thing is the Rocket has the first place right now, finishing with a 17.73. So now, not only does the Ferrari have to finish in front of him in this race, they will have to finish faster than a 17.73, otherwise they will still not move on. The Ferrari is out in front for the moment. In fact, they are pulling away as much as they can right now. They are determined to stay in this tournament. They are bouncing off the walls just slightly. Any friction with the walls can slow you down significantly, and other racers can take full advantage of that. They go around the turn, and here comes the Rocket, trying to catch him. Will he be able to do it? No, instead he flips upside down, and the Ferrari will finish in first, but he finishes with a slower time, which ultimately means, despite not finishing in this race, the Rocket is the one moving on. An absolute nail-biter. They do both go slightly airborne, but because the Ferrari... Actually, no, because the Rocket was going slightly sideways, he did flip over. But the Rocket is still moving on alongside the Viper, and now we just have 6 spots left to fill. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.